So he was Cap Jr. for a minute there. I mean, if he had the kite shield, he'd be throwing it like this, and it would go right into a person's eyeball. That would be a Zack Snyder Captain America. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Geek Branch podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Eternal Slade, and I got my partner in crime, the one, the only, Novelle. We are going to be talking about the Falcon and Winter Soldier premiere. We got to dive in and watch that just last night, and it was a blast. I mean, it kind of, felt like your typical, MCU type of fare that you're used to seeing, but it was a fun watch. It reminded me of Mission Impossible, Jack Reacher, basically 95% of Tom Cruise movies. So,
Yeah, it definitely does have that spy thriller vibe.
Yeah.
But it's totally in line with the standard MCU fare, which after the unique surrealism of WandaVision, it is kind of nice to touch back onto it, especially because we went an entire year without MCU entries. So, totally a pleasant welcome home in seeing Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 1. I really did love seeing Sam and Bucky together. They haven't actually teamed up yet, spoilers, but nevertheless, seeing them on the screen again was pretty fulfilling, especially after watching them deal with the snap, or the blip as they call it.
Right, getting to see both of their characters progress and see how each one is coping without their best buddy, which we find out he's not, which we already knew from the end of Endgame, but they much further confirm that he's not dead. We just don't know where he is right now, which is, of course, Captain America.
Right. Of course, if you remember from Endgame, he decided to remain in the timeline after returning the gems. And so he got to live out a full, standard, normal life and is now an old man, functionally retired from the role.
The guy that kept asking Falcon if Cap was on the moon, I don't know if you know who that is, but little bit of knowledge. His name is Torres, and Torres takes the mantle of the Falcon when we see Sam take the mantle of Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, these are our yes, I want to call it a torch pass, but it really isn't. It's more so this is just like the continuity that's leaning towards the comics. The reference to the moon, for instance, is referring to the time in which Captain America was on a moon base.
Which they did also in the Marvel's Avengers game recently.
Yes.
Where they had him using him for experiments for MODOK and everything. Terrible game when it came to the multiplayer, but fantastic story.
Yeah, and the acting was on point too.
Yes.
And the acting is very good here,
yes,
both in the slice of life aspect as we watch Bucky try to kind of cope with being 104 years old and running around in modern times just recently. He's having the same kind of fish out of water syndrome that Cap had in the first Captain America movie. In the same note, we also have Sam, who is returning after the blip and is trying to kind of acclimate to his life that has moved on in that 5-year time period, which we haven't really seen too many characters, at least our mainline heroes, touch on the effects of that, with the exception of Ant-Man. We got to see Ant-Man and technically Hawkeye, but Hawkeye is a bit strange on his, but those are the only two characters we've had getting a really strong reaction to the blip. You could count Captain Veronica Mambeau.
Yes,
from WandaVision
she had a big effect as well.
Yeah,
and we'll see more of Hawkeye's once we get his TV show as well.
Yeah, the through line of this continuity in which people have to deal with the consequences of Infinity War and Endgame is still being played out in the cinematic universe for Marvel. So we are looking forward to seeing many more characters having to cope or adjust or even just reestablish their life following the events. And we're definitely getting a really strong emotional story from Sam and his family in relation to that. he had to, of course, because no choice of his own of the blip, he left his family behind, which consisted of his sister and her 2 children. And they, you know, basically she single mothered it and sold it out without any help from the family and held on, you know, hard and strong for 5 years without him being there. And he, of course, feels some sense of guilt about that, as well as wants to kind of stubbornly fix it. And we get to see that type of society as well as close personal matter for Sam's character in the first episode, which I think is very good because it offset the intense action that played throughout the entirety of this first episode as well.
They had a little bit of that Marvel comedy, but it worked well when he went to the bank and the guy asked, so how do y'all get paid anyways? Like,
just Stark writes your checks.
Yeah, the Stark writes your checks. Yeah, and so and then he was like, you know, rest in peace and all that, real fast.
Yeah, right.
Real awkward. Also, an interesting thing, people might not know, but the actor for Sam, Anthony Mackie, he's actually from New Orleans, and so he was really excited to be able to put some love into that backstory. So you could see when he was playing into that, when he was in the New Orleans setting, that he was really enjoying that. He really got into that moment in the character.
Right. To also bring in a little bit of, you know, understanding for people who might not be American or may not understand the significance of the boat, which is their family boat. Mm-hmm. It does appear as if his family had a fisher business or a fishery in the Gulf of Mexico, which is where Louisiana, New Orleans is located. And it was kind of a family business that had since kind of fallen into disrepair after the blip. So it was interesting to see that strong cultural aspect as well, you know, denoting that region of the world, as well as that type of unique Americana that is a thing as a family boat. You know, that's not something that you'll get in California or in, you know, New York. It's something that is really localized to some type of situations and small family businesses like that you will get in that area of the United States, you know, in Florida or in Louisiana.
Well, you obviously got the opposite effect of that with Bucky, where, you know, he was obviously in Brooklyn.
Right. And of course, the city and world has changed completely for him, and he has not been able to adjust well.
If people don't remember, in Captain America First Avenger, that guy was a total playboy. All right, he could get any woman he pretty much wanted in his mind, and he was very confident, you know, he had a big personality, and it's kind of interesting seeing him kind of like having a really hard time even caring to want to date a woman again.
Right. And because he is a almost stereotypical or prototypical American youth that was the greatest generation.
Yep.
You know, they are the ones that shipped off to fight World War II, and they were, and still kind of to this day are, American folk heroes. And he got to really showcase that, as opposed to Steve, if you remember the original movie, because Steve was uniquely small.
I am a small guy. I mean, I'm not as tiny now, but I was never that small.
Right.
A natural amount of like
they overdid it a little bit.
Just a bit.
But as it stands, the interesting thing about that, just to bring it back and kind of fill it out, is that because he was in this kind of lionized persona, it just could not survive the trauma he went through, both fighting the war and then becoming the Winter Soldier and being on and off ice for decades, as he had to basically follow these orders in a kind of brainwashed fashion, and everything that remains of it is still with him. He has a memory of it, as we see when he's working to correct his previous mistakes when he was under the control of Hydra, but at the same side, he is not, you know, cognizant of it fully. You know, everything's kind of like a fever dream for him, where he gets woken up out of the ice, goes out and does a mission, like as you saw when he killed the old Japanese man's son, and then goes back on ice again for another decade.
Right.
Yeah. So he's had to deal with far more trauma than almost anyone that's going to be, at least in my mind, in the show. I think he does represent the person who has the hardest path to recover from.
Yeah, it shows his PTSD very well. Because clearly a soldier that has gone through what he's gone through, it's going to take a while for him to cope. And it's going to help strengthen that bond between him and Sam, which they, you know, are hinting towards with his therapy session, with his very interesting and obviously a veteran as well therapist. And you could tell by the way she was talking to him.
Right. Well, yes. I think that the strength of what's going to be the relationship between Sam and Bucky is that it is replicating the original relationship between Bucky and Cap.
Yep.
When, you know, he was kind of Cap's sidekick. It's not really a sidekick.
For a very short period of time.
Right. He's not really a sidekick. He's just another soldier, but he is Cap's partner, one for one, as they fight their way through World War II. And that reestablishing a relationship like that, even if it means, you know, he isn't getting the shield and title himself, because that's always my personal opinion, is that the person who inherits the title from Cap would be Bucky.
I mean, I'm Team Bucky too, but I understand why MCU is going in the direction that they're going. I think that they'll try to strengthen the reasonings why he's going to become Captain America. Although I'm always Team Bucky.
Right, and I don't think that there's an issue with Sam.
I don't think so either.
Sam was a close friend, comic and as well as in the MCU, especially, of Captain America. And I think that more than anything, the reason why he gave the shield to Sam and not to Bucky is because he wanted Bucky to retire. He wanted Bucky to find some semblance of peace. And if anything, I would say that would be Cap's last regret, is that his time travel shenanigans didn't obviously fix Bucky's life. I don't know if he felt that he shouldn't do it, because obviously there's the opportunity for him to, when he's traveling back in time, rescue Bucky from Hydra.
Well, he probably felt like he would have messed with the timeline
too much by doing.
I mean,
because remember,
he already messed up a lot of it,
right,
by what he did. But
you do have to remember that Bucky is responsible for the death of Tony Stark's parents, and Tony Stark, without having to have the personality traits he gained from trying to accomplish what his father did, Howard Stark, may not be the Tony Stark we know. So it was too much of a risk, I guess, to go back and try to save Bucky.
One would assume that Tony Stark wouldn't end up being Tony Stark if his dad was still around.
Right. I mean, he would probably not be as prolific as he ended up being. He'd definitely be accomplished, but I think if you know the comics, he'd probably end up being closer to Arno Stark than a superhero. And
I don't think he would have ended up in that situation where he had to become the Iron Man. You know what I mean?
Right. He wouldn't have ended up in a cave in, you know, Afghanistan in this continuity. It was Vietnam originally, and then, you know.
Yeah, they got to modernize it. That makes sense.
Yeah, they update with the times, and that's exactly what we've seen done here with Sam, especially because Sam is continuing his hero work as the Falcon, and apparently still not being paid to do so, because honestly,
well, he's getting paid by the Air Force now, finally.
Right, but I'm looking back there, and I'm like, look, man, you need a loan for your family business, and I'm like, you work for the Air Force. You just completed an incredibly dangerous mission. Where is the check from that?
I mean, you'd be surprised. That's the military for you, buddy. Right. When it comes to the soldiers.
And he wants to get a loan, from someplace local. And I don't know if that's just a sticking point for him, but I'm like, man, look, if you want a loan and you don't want a handout, you can still go get a loan from Pepper. Literally just walk up to Pepper Potts and she will sign a loan with you. It will probably
Happy, because I think isn't Happy like in charge of all of his stuff basically.
I don't know who's actually become the president.
I think it's I don't think he's the president
of Stark Industries.
I think he takes care of a lot of the
management.
Yeah,
I could have sworn he handed it to Pepper, and that
would make more sense. Yeah,
that Happy is serving some type of advisory or secretarial role.
Yeah.
But regardless, I'm like, yes, you could go to the Starks, because I guess Pepper Potts is now Pepper Stark. But regardless, you can go over there and obviously ask for a loan.
That would make too much sense, though.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just like, I hated seeing him struggle with it, because I'm like, first off, he is a hero.
Right.
And there should be some solid respect, just society-wise, for what they accomplished for the planet Earth. You know what I'm saying? Even if you can't give him money, you could still qualify him for a loan. He can't run away from it. Literally, your bank is doing business with Falcon. There is no reason why you wouldn't
make him look really bad.
Right, wouldn't sign off with it. And I'm just like,
if it was Bucky, sure, that makes sense. He's still in the process of being pardoned, as we find out.
Yes, he is also, by the way, being charged or at least had charges brought up against him, just like in Winter Soldier. And I'm like, we proved 100% that that guy did nothing of his own free will.
Right.
He is an American soldier who is a POW, captured by the enemy, brainwashed, and then used. That guy isn't guilty of anything. What do you mean pardoning?
And now he's trying to right his wrongs. Like man, that was so hilarious when he went to that woman's car and everything. And the therapist is like, you followed the 3 rules, right?
Not at all.
He's like, yes, of course.
He's just lying about it, but yeah.
And then she's like, well, you did make sure to follow the second rule. That's the most important one. And
Do
he's
no
like,
harm.
Yeah, he's like, well, if that's the most important, why isn't that number 1?
Right. Well, they don't want him to break the law, apparently, is the first one.
I mean, clearly he's going to be doing that in this movie.
Unless he gets some type of, government oversight that kind of gives him that license to do whatever Winter Soldier does.
I'm assuming not. I feel like that they're going to become fugitives again.
I don't want to. I want them to play it legit because they're going up against, once again, spoiler, U.S. agent.
Yes. So a lot of people who do not read the comics
don't know who that is.
And is super pissed off, as they should be, because he's a douchebag. But they don't know he's a douchebag yet. But he will be. I would assume the MCU would keep him as a douchebag.
He's an anti-hero in all, is kind of the thing that, like, he's not evil. He's not like Hydra.
That's why I said douchebag.
Yeah.
There's a fine line,
Right. But he is who America chose through various, means to try to replicate Captain America. And by the way, in the continuity of Marvel, most things actually are just a long series of attempts for America to make more Captain Americas. America
or
really,
other countries too.
Well, yes, but like Red Guard in the Black Widow movie we may get one day.
Cross our fingers in May.
Right. But as it stands, yes, the Marvel Universe is obsessed with remaking Captain America because Captain America is all in all perfect. He is a peak human being with no flaws whatsoever and an untapped potential.
Yeah, of course they want to have their army of super soldiers. I mean, that's pretty typical.
Right. But even then, not just that.
They like having symbols too.
Right. It's about what he is, because the thing about Captain America is that when you wash away all the history and the paint, what you do have is the best a human being can be, and there's plenty of reasons to want that. Not just even for I can exploit it or use it. Like, Captain America is the human future.
So what you're telling me is to figure out who the next Captain America is, you have to go and throw a grenade at a group of soldiers and see which one grabs it and tries to protect everyone.
Right, and see that's the issue with U.S. Agent.
Yeah.
U.S. Agent won't do that.
Right,
and that's the problem.
Because that's the core of our main man.
Right,
a Cap.
He's always represented the best Americans and the best America could be. And it's a pure, innocent, even like naive at sometimes, understanding of we can do better, we can do right, we can be good. And that is the beauty of Captain America. And it's why he's one of my favorite superheroes of all time. And I love the dichotomy between him and, Tony Stark.
Which is his favorite hero.
Yes, Tony Stark is numero uno for me, because Tony Stark is all of those things on the mental side, right? Like, he is the best a human being can be as far as your brain is concerned, your potential to affect the world around you, not just be. But
he's the comic book Elon Musk.
Yeah. And of course, he has many more character flaws than Cap does. Cap is like Superman, where he has very few, if any, actual character flaws. And that's another big thing here. The reason why U.S. Agent comes around in the comic is because America takes a stance that Captain cannot agree with.
Right.
And so he rejects it and becomes Nomad, which is also something that we've already seen with the Sokovia Accords in Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
And in the interim in the comics, the U.S. is like, well, we can't be without a Captain America, which is absolutely true. There should never, at any point in time, in my opinion, in the Marvel Universe, not be a Captain America.
So there's a lot of people, and they're going to be disappointed, just like they were disappointed with WandaVision when they had all these theories and ideas about what's going to happen. I don't think that Captain America is going to be coming back, not Steve. Everybody keeps thinking he'll come back as Nomad, or he's already played Nomad before, first of all.
Right.
Or some form or fashion of a different version of his character.
And in the worst timeline, people are thinking that he's going to come back as
he's
like
not going to come
Cap.
back as Hydra Nazi
in
Cap.
the worst timeline. Like, that's the worst theories. I'm just like, look. We already got U.S. Agent.
Yeah.
That's bad enough.
Right.
We do not need Hydra Cap.
If we get Steve, the only thing I can imagine is a quick cameo, and he's old Steve. And that's at the most.
Right. Or we could go with some of the bigger, stronger hits, but I don't think we can bring Captain America back to screen in this form. Same thing with Robbie Downey Jr. and Tony Stark.
Yeah.
They can come back, just not like this.
Right. And it kind of in my opinion, it would ruin the whole point of the show, which is to basically build Sam up as the new Captain America, because clearly at the end he's going to become Cap.
Right. And it's really about like who can embody those American values best. And of the characters that, we have that are directly related to that type of who is going to be the American, the Captain America. Obviously, Bucky has way too much trauma to achieve it. Now, he's cut from the same cloth. He is the exact type of man Steve was back then, without the handicaps.
Right.
He didn't have as much adversity as young Steve did. But nevertheless, he is still a person who holds at that time those American values that we cherish most, the greatest generation. And if he could overcome it, he would work for it. But obviously, that's not something that's going to happen in a season. So if anyone's picking up the title in one season, it's going to be Sam, who understood Cap best as his best friend.
So I think that Sam proved himself in this episode by his actions that he does earn the title of Captain America once he leads up to that, because during this whole thing, he was thinking about how great Cap was, the symbol that Cap was. He doesn't think that anybody could measure up to that. He doesn't think that he can measure up to that. And so he gives his shield to the Smithsonian to try to honor Cap. And he feels terrible about it, but he just doesn't feel like it's right for him. And I think that characterization of him proves that he's the right choice. Someone that cares that much about that symbol, that cares about what it means to be Captain America, even though he doubts himself right now, I think that he's the best option that we have.
Right. And also in that same vein, it may be revealing his character flaw for his arc in the season.
Right.
Which is reminiscent because, as you saw earlier, he got into a conversation with Rhodey, James Rhodes, who is Iron Man's kind of equivalent to what Falcon plays to Captain America. They are their partner slash not best really bros. A sidekick, but his best friend and is occupying that role. And so as it stands, they both kind of run into the same kind of issue. They're not the main man. They are the strong second, and there is kind of an inferiority complex that is shared by, both of them in that regard, because they contain parts of the things that make the main hero, the first hero of the type, that iconic figure. Like, for instance, War Machine is an excellent pilot, is wonderful at using the War Machine suit, is incredibly well suited for using that type of weapons platform, unlike Tony.
Right.
He has his own specialty, but he is not the engineer. He's not the engineer. He's not the business mogul. He's not the character that is Iron Man. And Rhodey, throughout the comics, as well as some to a point in the MCU, especially after he gets injured by Vision, he feels a sense of kind of inferiority to being, even in Iron Man 2, it was touched on this as well.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, that he feels
a lot, really.
Yeah, it was a strong sense there. That he's Iron Man's second, and he's inferior because of that, when he's not. He's his own hero, and he is worthy of the mantle that he has.
His own strength.
Yeah,
he's just not Iron Man.
Right, and then Falcon, of course, getting the shield, has to get hit with the exact same thing. That's the reason why I loved that in the Captain America Memorial Museum, he was talking to Rhodey, because Rhodey is literally his simile in the MCU as well as in the comics about being the second man in this inheritance cycle. And so when we're looking at what's happening with Falcon, I think that a big character arc for him is going to be embracing his Captain America. What makes him the Captain America that perhaps
of the modern era.
Right. That perhaps Steve can't be, because Steve is now, even if even if Steve comes back, young Steve, as Captain America, the Captain America that fought in Infinity War, that beat Thanos, came back and stayed as Captain America, there's a critical flaw to that Steve continuing as Captain America in the modern era.
Yeah, because he already detracted from the government.
Right. He's against the government, one. And two, not that there's anything wrong with that. Trust me.
No.
Being against the American government
right, yeah, he does that
sometimes
a lot.
the right thing.
And technically Falcon did too.
Right.
But it is a good point to people, because Falcon wasn't Captain America yet.
Right.
Like Captain America, maybe in the public's eyes, seeing him, I don't know, it might be a stain to his legacy.
It's a new landscape
Yeah.
that Cap doesn't quite fit in. And Cap
Right.
always carries certain things with him that will never, they're timeless.
Right.
Like Captain America's brand of Americana is never wrong.
Right.
Because it is the best thing about what it is to be an American, but it's not always right for the situation.
Right. It's Americana that people don't currently understand, and a lot of people don't necessarily accept.
Right. And that kind of tough, stick-to-itness, we can shoulder it through, can be unsympathetic to the situation that people in this continuity are currently dealing with. And the important part about that is Cap wasn't snapped. Cap wasn't blanked out.
Right.
While Falcon, Sam, was.
Yes.
And he shares that part of half of America, half of the world that Cap is missing.
I think it also, and it shows it in Winter Soldier, the way both of them handle their travesties are completely different from one another. Where Sam, he goes and he obviously Cap changes by Endgame, but he was the one that kind of encouraged him with the meetings and stuff like that as a veteran and different stuff like that, where he was more of a leader of and kind of helped Cap grow in that area.
Right. Captain America, Steve Rogers, is the Captain America for the fight.
Right.
If there's something wrong with the country, something wrong with the world, and you need to take a stand, that is the Captain America that we need, Steve Rogers. But the Captain America for the recovery, for coming back from all the damage that the snap did, from all the trauma that people have to endure for having been gone for 5 years or having lost their family for 5 years, the world rearranging itself in this new form and fashion where you need to rely on the government now.
Right.
That being independent from the American government or any world government is probably not the best thing. Going off the grid here and now is just bad. Just looking at what happens when he's trying to get this loan. It's like the bank tells him up the front, like half the world disappeared. We just don't give out loans, man. It's not even about
everybody
that.
Came back all of a sudden.
Yeah, right. We can't.
So Sam, he relates to the American people far more than Steve would. No offense to Steve, he ain't got no family left. Who does he have that would allow him to relate to that? He doesn't have family that's struggling, and there's nothing wrong with that. He can't help it. He was a man out of time. And it also proves with Bucky, he wouldn't be able to relate to people in that way either. I don't think he would be able to have that openness to the citizens as Sam will be able to, also because of all the stuff that he's trying to process right now, obviously.
Right. It's about now, what is the purpose of the symbol? Right. Because if you want to talk about who still fits the symbol best, it's still going to be of the current people that can take it, because old Steve can't. Right. It would be Bucky, but just like old Steve, or Steve if he was still young, it's not the right time to use the symbol in that way. Right. The shield isn't going to be used to bash someone's face in here. The shield is a platform for bringing people together and recovering.
Now, if there was a MCU Bucky Cap, I think the perfect way to handle that would be if the Falcon Cap was to be basically both of them in one of the big major MCU events, and either he dies or gets seriously injured, and I think that would be the time for a more war Cap, just like the old school Cap.
Yeah, or they find a second shield.
Right.
And one of them gets the kite shield, and the other one gets the round shield, the frisbee.
Imagine someone trying to throw the kite shield.
Yeah, well, first off, that's just lethal.
I mean, he essentially had in Infinity War like a shield on his arm. Yeah. I mean, so he was Cap Jr. for a minute there. I mean, if he had the kite shield, he would be throwing it like this and it would go right into a person's eyeball. That would be a Zack Snyder Captain America.
Right. Not just the shotgun legs, but also the lethal shield.
Well, apparently Marvel's been trying to get a hold of him. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe they're planning on having a deadly Captain America like that.
Oh, and they could do like Dark Avengers with
Snyder.
That would work. That's Snyder's alley.
Yeah, except for they would have to tell him to tone it down.
That was the Dark Avengers. So you get to go and do crazy things with those guys.
I mean, I guess you could go. I mean, if they feel comfortable enough to do a Deadpool 3, I think anything's open now at this point.
Right.
Yeah, now that Kevin Feige basically was told, get over it, he makes $1 billion. So we're going to make a rated R Deadpool.
Exactly. Plus, he's continuously gained more ensemble cast as it goes on.
Right.
Eventually, he's going to have his own team.
I mean, he essentially did in Deadpool 2.
No, it was kind of like half X-Men, half X-Force. That's kind of what it was. It was like half X-Men, half X-Force.
It was still close though.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to the show at hand. I think we both felt like that they gave a good, clear direction where the show's going. It's going to be a buddy cop show. You know, it's going to have some espionage. We're going to get to see them go up against Baron Zemo. We didn't see that in the first episode, but we saw in the posters and the trailers.
We know it's
and everything.
coming.
And we know it's coming. We got to see Torres. We got to see him kind of being in action and kind of building up his character for us to understand why he would become Falcon if they decide to go in that direction.
Right, but also that dude almost died, man.
He almost died.
Dude, when he got curb stomped by the guy with super strength, I'm just like, man, I think he's dead.
I mean, he's a perfect Falcon. I mean, you know, no offense, but half the time, most Falcons are useless, in my opinion. I have said repeatedly, if it was not for Anthony Mackie, I would not care about that character, but he does such a good job with that character. I know people like Falcon. I
like Falcon.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Falcon. I'm sorry. I mean, I love Cap. It's just that a guy with wings is not that entertaining to me.
I mean, he's like super overpowered in the MCU.
Right.
You saw all the crazy things Red Wing did.
Well, you know why.
Yeah, it's Stark Tech.
Right. Stark Tech, and to make him more entertaining.
Right. But even then, it's just, you know.
I know. I mean, at least they didn't go with the old school Falcon, where he has literal wings and a bird he talks to.
Yeah. What, dude, man, stop dissing the
I'm sorry. I just don't like.
I love it. Don't get me wrong, man. You got to think about it back in the day, dude.
I'm sure people loved it back then.
People are just like so modern. They can't step back and remember how wonderful things were. It's like, oh, look, it's Technicolor, man. That just looks like bad TV.
I mean, I can't talk. I like Hawkman and Hawkgirl, so I guess I'm being a bit of a hypocrite. So.
Right, yeah. What, do we need to give him a mace?
There you go. Give him a mace and give him a bad attitude like Hawkman, and then there you go.
Hawkman has the worst attitude. But anyways, regardless, Guy Gardner and Hawkman, those two.
I'm telling you, that's the one thing they have to get right for the Black Adam movie when it comes to Hawkeye.
Yes.
Not Hawkeye, Hawkman. If Hawkeye is in a DC movie, we should be very concerned, or we're finally getting the crossover everybody was worried about.
What, Green Arrow and Hawkeye?
Yeah.
Buddy cop?
Yeah. What's the comic line called where the Marvel and the DC comics meet?
Dude, that's the Amalgamation Universe.
The Amalgamation Universe.
That is some wonderful, crazy stuff.
Yes. That is something y'all should go check out. There's some wild stuff that has happened in the Amalgamation. I can't even say that word, but he can say that word.
Yeah, Amalgamation.
Yes.
Where they literally fuse two heroes together into one. And they get all the powers of both, and it's a crazy, crazy universe.
Yes.
My favorite one is who did they fuse Doomsday with? Doomsday and someone else. It was regardless, you weren't killing the thing.
Yeah.
It was monstrosity. It's both of the big hulking monster villains.
I love it. But that is not anything that is going to happen in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We are going to be getting, like I said, in my opinion, it's a back to basics. We got the wild and mysterious WandaVision, and now we got the show that makes us feel at home. What we remember, the MCU is all about, especially since, in my opinion, one of the greatest MCU movies is Winter Soldier, and this thing is taking direct inspiration, obviously, since it has a lot of those characters from Winter Soldier, and I'm loving it. So I'm ready to see more. I'm not going to be making wild theories about this show. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it.
We learned from one.
Yeah, I learned especially from WandaVision. I disappointed myself. I just hope they don't give us another boner joke for no reason. That's my one hope.
Ralph Boner.
The worst. I'm telling you. Anyways, so I hope y'all enjoyed the first episode. I hope that y'all have an opportunity to leave a comment below. Please please subscribe. We want to have a conversation with y'all. But I want to leave this off by saying, as I always say, thank you for letting me and Novelle get to the root of our geek culture with you.